Welcome back to Triple H Home Improvement. I'm your host, the 7 Foot Painter. I've got to paint my bedroom. This is a good way to kind of remodel. It's almost going to be a remodel because I'm not just painting. I have to fix some places in the ceiling that are messed up. I've got to fix all the places in the walls that are messed up. And I don't like this chair rail. It's not going to match the new trim that we've been putting around the windows. And I'm going to take that off, so I'm going to have to pry it off, mud it, texture it to match the texture on the walls. Before I do all that, I'm going to work on the ceiling, and then I'm going to fix that, and then I'm going to paint the ceiling before I paint the walls because of gravity. But anyway, first thing we got to do, I've already gotten everything out of this room that I possibly could. I didn't feel like moving the bed or that big cabinet there, so I'm just going to cover it with plastic. So we'll be right back once we get everything covered up, and I'll show you how to fix ceiling. I'll show you how to paint a ceiling without a ladder. We've got everything covered up. I covered the floor and all because we're doing the ceilings first. Once we start painting that, I need everything covered. But eventually we're going to be doing the walls too. So I took off the chair rail because I didn't like it. So I scored it with the knife. I pried it off. I went ahead and scraped all the excess caulk off like this. Make sure there's nothing sticking up. All the little holes from the nails, take the back of a knife or something and just push those in so they're not sticking out. I want everything ready for mud before I start getting a mud pan full of mud or start mixing mud. So we're gonna start on the ceiling. I've already got everything on the walls scraped, and I went around with a pencil and just looked over everything the best I could. I looked at every angle and looked for any holes or any little imperfections that I just can't live with. Something, if you see something that you can live with, it doesn't bother you, don't circle it. But that way, when I mix up the mud, I'm ready to go. And I'm going to be using some 20-minute hot mud, so I don't want it drying up in my pan while I'm looking around for stuff. So this way, if you go around circling everything and getting everything ready first, that way once you get that mud ready, you can just go with it. And you'll be able to see the places that need it, because sometimes you're not going to see those little bitty holes unless you're looking for them. That's why we circle them. But anyway, if you look at this, I've got a bad tape joint. It's bubbling and it's kind of coming loose. The only way to fix that is to cut it out. If I try to mud over that, it's just going to keep showing through, and it doesn't take long. So the right way to do it, the only way to do it really, is to cut it out. So you're going to cut here and look for wherever it stops, and maybe go a couple more inches out from there and cut just nice and wide, wider than the tape would be, because we don't know exactly. That could be the center of the tape, that could be the edge, like this edge or this edge, but I'm pretty sure that's the center. Once you get that, take your little 5-in-1 or something and start digging right there where it's bubbled. And then you'll be able to see the tape. It's kind of a yellow colored. And then kind of get up in there and start scraping it out. Once you get it started, it'll come out pretty easy. So there's the edge there now. So if we can get, there we go. Then you can just pull it. As long as you cut deep enough, it'll come right off right there. And that'll keep it from going any further. And keep going this way right there. Scrape all this loose stuff off, whether it's paint and mud or whatever that's kind of loose. Get that nice, because we don't want that all in the mud when we start mudding it. Now that we've got everything ready to go, I had another spot over there I had to do the same thing with, but I wanted to show you how to do this. Because if you've got a crease or a crack in your drywall, whether it's the ceiling or the wall, that's how you fix it. We got to retape it. So I'm going to go mix up some mud now that we have everything ready for mud. And I'll get everything ready and I'll show you how to mix it. All right, when you're working with hot mud, take it easy when you're mixing it. I'll just add a little bit of water. I mean, I've been doing this for a while, so I know kind of about how much is too much and how much is not enough. But I'll put a little water in there first. And I've got the water a little warm. And I'm going to mix a lot of it because I've got a lot of mud work to do in here. So I'll start out with a little water, and then Just kind of mix it around in there. It's messy, especially when you're mixing a lot. And you're gonna have to add more water. If you want to come over here and look a little closer, you can see how I'm doing this. And just a little bit at a time. You don't want to overdo it, because if you put too much water in, you're gonna have to put more mud. And then when you put more mud, you might have to put more water, and then you'll go back and forth until you run out of mud. So just a little at a time. Just a little at a time. Oh, losing my balance here. All right, I can probably stand up now. But there we go. Now you can see I got it a little better. Just a little chalky over here, a little soupy over there, but you get the drift. Just keep mixing. All right, so we've got two different types of tapes here. We got the paper and we've got the mesh. Some people hate the mesh. Some people hate the paper. I can work with either one. They don't bother me. I'm going to show you how to do the mesh, because most beginners, most people out there learning, are probably going to use the mesh because it's a heck of a lot easier. But once you find the end, this is kind of like a self-sticking type of stuff, but it doesn't always stick to this dry sheetrock. But anyway, once you get it up there, you put your knife on there like this, and you kind of pull it back this way, and that's how you cut it, nice and easy. Super, super easy to do. And make sure it's inside this groove. You don't want it sticking out here, because then when you go to sand it, you're going to see those little fibers. And if you see any little loose fibers like this, go ahead and just cut it off if you can. Because this has been rolling around in the bed of my truck for God knows how long. But then you just apply the mud. And the way I'm going to show you is, it takes more steps, but it's easier, especially if you're not, especially if you're a beginner or if you're new to this kind of stuff. Just try to scrape as much off as you can, because the less sanding you have to do, the easier life is going to be. And yes, I'm going to have to let this dry and put more mud on it, probably 2 or 3 more times, but it'll also dry quicker doing it this way, even though I have to let it dry 5 times, so I'm going to have like, God knows how many coats. It could take 3, it could take 5, but if you just try to scrape it all off and just leave the mud in there, once you come back, you'll do that again and again, at least 3 times, and then once you sand it, it'll be good to go. But anyway, and with these, we're going to pretty much do the same thing. And you shouldn't have to put more than 1 coat on this, unless there's like a big gouging. But you basically put the mud on, and you scrape it off. And then with this, I'm going to have to lightly sand it and then texture it. So the texture's going to hide a little bit too. Don't be too worried about that. Don't leave it so thick that you're going to have to sand it really hard. We've got everything mudded and taped. I put another coat on this, and I also put another coat on where the chair rail was, because it kind of sunk down in that groove where I'd cut with the razor blade. So while that's drying, we took all the plates off the walls, put tape on them, because we're going to be painting the walls too. We got to take these down. Don't ever try to paint around this stuff, and whatever you do, don't put latex paint on here. I've heard of people putting sealant paint, just flat white latex sealant paint on these vents. And if you look closely, these things already have rust on them, or that happens because they sweat sometimes. If somebody leaves a window cracked or a door open or whatever, and these things can get kind of wet and sweat. And you see we have rust going around these things. So we're going to take them outside, we're going to clean them, sand the rust off, and then spray paint them with some good oil-based spray paint. It don't have to be the same exact color as the ceiling. It don't have to be the same exact sheen. If you want it flat, just use the Kilz primer and slap it back up there. Next time you paint your ceiling, you can slap another coat on there or whatever. But it has a little rust. If this had latex paint on it, it would be way worse because it would hold the moisture under that paint. That paint would just keep it there. And we want a good oil-based primer and oil-based paint on these. Just a spray can, just cheap. It doesn't have to be anything expensive. But take those down and we'll paint up to this. All right, while I'm still waiting for the ceiling to dry up here, this is already dry. It's been about 20 minutes since the last coat that I put on here. So we're gonna pole sand it. I've got like some 100 grit pole sanding paper. And while I'm doing that, I'm gonna mainly focus on these spots. You don't wanna push it this way because then it can kind of flip on you, and if it flips, it can do that and it gouges the wall up or whatever. But kind of at an angle and just nice and easy. We don't wanna put too much pressure on it. Just go over it, the whole thing lightly. And then focus on these edges, and if you have to, you can get a piece of paper and fold it up and hit it with your fingers or with a piece of sandpaper with your hand. But once we do that, I'm going to sand this entire wall because you always want to sand in between coats no matter what you're painting, whether it's your walls, your trim, it doesn't matter if it's textured or not. Just always sand in between coats. We're gonna do that all the way around the room, and then I'm gonna texture this, the places on the walls that need texture, and try to match it the best I can, and I'll show you that. I'll come back and show you when I do that. And then, while that's drying, I'll work on the ceiling whenever that dries. I might have to get the heat gun to dry these couple of places where I put the tape because the mud's thick and it's taking forever to dry. But we're gonna go ahead and sand the entire room. We'll leave the ceiling off for now. I'm about halfway, and I noticed it's taking a little bit longer to sand. So change out your sandpaper frequently, because once it gets worn down, you're just working harder and harder and putting more and more pressure on it just to get anything done. But you take this piece and you just fold it up like this. And then now you have a piece for when you're done pole sanding the walls. You can go around the edges where, yeah, like up here. You can get those a little better. So hang on to that, and then this isn't easy. It's a lot more work. That's why a lot of people skip this, but trust me, if you don't skip this, you're gonna get a better professional looking paint job. Because if you don't sand it in between coats, you get more and more built up, what I like to call boogers in the paint. Like if you go around and you can feel little high spots, some of them kind of sharp. It's just garbage or dried up paint that gets in your paint as you're applying it. So always sand in between. Even though it's not fun to do, it's worth it. All right, I'm ready to texture. We're gonna use pre-mixed mud for this. And you still have to mix a little bit of water into it to make it a little thinner, because if it's straight out of the bucket, it's gonna be too thick. This is a cool little trick because you can't set this thing down to like fill it up if you don't have a friend to help you. I just put it in a 5-gallon bucket, an empty one. And then this I had left over from a side job that I did. There might be some little chunks in there because it's been sitting in the garage for a little while, but I'm just gonna have to deal with that. Just pour it on in there. I've got my pressure set somewhere between like 60 and 80 or something. This has some cool little adjustments on it. This adjusts the how much airflow is to the gun from the compressor, and this one adjusts how far back the trigger goes, so the flow of the mud coming through. So we'll just kind of play with that, and of course you got like 3 different size tips. So I think I got like the medium-sized tip on here, but I'm not covering my windows because I'm going to replace them, and I don't care about the blinds because we're going to get new blinds too. We're just not doing it this weekend. But once you get it ready to go, floor covered. I should have taped it or something. The higher the air pressure, the faster it's going to come out and the smaller the beads are going to be. So if it looks like it's too small, back off on the air pressure a little bit. And you hear that farting kind of sound, that means you're getting real big. And you just kind of feather it in, make it as consistent as possible with what's already on there. So I don't want to texture the entire wall. I'm just going where it needs. All right, we got the ceiling sanded. You can see that this is pretty smooth. You can still kind of see the mud there in my pencil lines, of course, but it feels smooth. Once we get some paint on there, you won't see it. I pole sanded the ceiling, the whole thing. I pole sanded the whole ceiling, and I paid special attention to these outside edges of where the mud was, and also the corners. Take a piece of sandpaper like this, because you can see my pencil line. I did some mud work in there. Sand it this way with this hand, and this way with this hand, and then get it real nice and good. Just pay real close attention to those corners, because your eyes kind of draw there, or you get drawn to it or whatever. But ceiling's ready for paint. I'm gonna get the paint set up, and we'll roll this ceiling out and cut it in. And anyway, that's gonna turn out really nice. No more hump in the sheetrock. Okay, we sanded the ceiling, and now we're ready to paint it finally. So you need a good rolling pole. One of these is really awesome. A good roller and a good roller nap. I prefer lamb's wool, but this is one of those 50-50. They're not my favorite, but they're my second favorite maybe. But lamb's wool is way better because it doesn't spray as much paint off of it, and it holds more paint into it. So when you're painting, it just has a more even coat. But anyway, we can do that some other time. I strained the paint. First I had to mix it up and I strained it. This is a good quality, no VOC paint and primer in one, flat ceiling white. So I'm gonna roll it first and then cut it in, because it's gonna make my life a little easier. It's gonna be a little quicker for me, because I can roll it really close and then I don't have to spend so much time cutting it in way out here. And it's flat, so you're not gonna tell. You can let this stuff dry and come back and cut it in the next day. It doesn't matter, because it's a flat sheen. If you're doing like a satin or a semi-gloss, or even sometimes eggshell is not as bad, but you'll be able to see it. When you're rolling ceilings, please don't do this. I hate it when people do that. I feel sorry for them, because they're going to sling paint all over their face, or they're doing it like this. They're rolling over their head. You're going to get paint in your eyes. It's not going to be very pleasant. Hold the roller out here like this. I know I'm tall. I've done 12-foot ceilings this way. So a short person can do this too if they have the long enough pole. Hold it out in front of you and away from you, and just get as close to that edge as possible. And when you're around the edges, kind of put this end up against the edge, not all the way up against it, but you want it about an inch or two off of the wall. You don't want to bump the wall with it. Of course, we're going to be painting the walls, but still, you don't want that buildup. Another thing, doesn't matter which way you roll it. Some people say you got to roll it this way or this way, because when you walk in, you don't want to see those lines. If you see lines in your paint, you're not painting right. You got to smooth it out, put the paint on, come back, and then lightly, very gently, once you get some paint on there, kind of keep it wet. But you get yourself out of this little corner right here, I can show you a little better. And you're not going to really tell where you painted sometimes. You got to look at it at different angles, look for that glare. But if you put too much pressure on this side of the roller or this side of the roller, when you do that, that's how you get lines. So nice and lightly, evenly, roll over everything, back and forth, one direction. It doesn't matter which direction, just roll it back and forth one direction without putting any pressure on this side or this side, you want an even pressure. Nice and even and light pressure. You're gonna roll back over it, it's called back rolling. That's how you get a nice finish. And if you look at all the angles, you can't see any lines. Doesn't matter which side or which way the light's coming in or any of that, doesn't matter. So if you see lines in your paint and you're worried about which way the light's coming into the room or which way you're walking into the room, you're not painting right. Again, we're keeping the roller out away from our body. We're not rolling directly over our head because that's just stupid. That's common sense. Gravity, y'all, gravity. I don't want none of that. I don't want no paint in our eyes. Don't want it in my hair, don't want it in my face. You know, paint comes off your skin pretty easily, but when it's in your hair, that can be a little bit of a pain in the butt to get out. And I strain my paint because sometimes if that bucket's been sitting for a while, even if it's new, it don't even matter. Even new buckets. I've had new buckets where I pour it up and there's all this dry paint that like dried to the lid and then it falls into the paint, the wet paint, and then you get those guts and boogers. So I'm looking it over, making sure I don't have any missed spots or anything. And I'm keeping the roller not directly over my head, but out away from my body. And you're just gonna keep rolling and get the whole ceiling. Normally, I would take the ceiling fan down, or at least the blades off, but I'm a pretty good painter. And here's another little trick. Here's how you keep from dripping all over the place. Keep this part right here clean. If you get a lot of paint on here, or even on this side, if you scrape it up against the side of the bucket or something, that's where your drips are usually going to come from. So try to keep that clean. Try not to dunk it. If you dunk this thing too far into the paint, paint's going to get all the way up to here on this thing, and it's going to just drip and drip and drip. You don't want that. That's one of the little tips and tricks of not dripping paint all over the place when you're trying to paint, especially ceilings, y'all. Just take your time, be conscientious. You know, if you want to use a pan, that's fine. I don't like pans because then I got to use two hands to pick it up. If I got a bucket like this that has a handle, I can just grab it with one hand. I can move it where I want to go. But don't set it in the middle of the room or don't set it right here if you're going to be painting right here and backing up into it. Just be aware of where you're painting and where you're moving. That's why my cut-in bucket's way over there in the corner. Don't put it in the middle of the room where somebody can walk in and kick it over. So I'm just going to keep going. Keep the bucket in front of me. I'm going to be backing up while I'm rolling. I'm going to do this half of the room, then I'm going to go over there and do that half of the room. Sometimes you have to move furniture around. That's fine, there ain't nothing wrong with that. You can paint one half, move the furniture to the other half of the room and do that, but I've got a pretty good reach. So I'm just going to paint over it. I've got it all covered up. Make sure you don't have any lines. Go back and back roll it nice and even, really, really light. You're not putting any pressure at all on it. Just enough to where the roller is rolling while you're pushing it. But that's how it's done. We'll come back and cut it in. And I think that's all the information I can give you on rolling the ceiling for now. So I'm going to finish this up. I'll be back to show you how to cut it in. So we got one coat on the ceiling. Now is a good time to go around and look for places to patch that that need a little more attention, because sometimes you're just not going to see everything until you get that first coat on it. Same with the walls. We'll do the walls on another video. For the cutting in on the ceiling, because I was painting the walls, I just slopped paint on there, I was in a hurry trying to get it done so I can get these walls done. By the time I cleaned up my roller and got it into the wall paint, it was dry enough for me to cut in. So the ceiling, the paint that I'm using is pretty good paint. Shouldn't have to put 2 full coats on. You can if you want. It's probably better to do that, but this is a really good paint, and I could just touch these spots up. I'll sand them and then put 2 coats on. It's a paint and primer. So I'll put 2 coats on the fresh mud, the places where I patched it. So I've got a little bit of sanding to do, a little bit of work to do there, and then we'll put the vents back on and all that good stuff. But that'll be pretty much it for this video. My next video is going to be painting the walls. Kind of jumped the gun, but I got to put another coat on these. So I'll show you how to cut in, how to roll the walls, how to keep the paint off the floor and all that wonderful stuff. But this room looks so much better without the chair rail and a new color. So that's that. We'll see you guys next time.